February 7th meeting. Thank you all for coming in person and via Zoom. We are, for anyone who requires translation, we do have a translator with us this evening, and if you need translation, at the bottom of your screen, you will notice an icon that will help you with that, and we will now have that translated.
Buenas tardes, bienvenidos a todos los que están con nosotros en presencia y también a través de Zoom. Esta junta va a ser interpretada al español. Cuando termine de hablar, va a activarse un pequeño icono del globo terráqueo en el menú de opciones. La parte de abajo lo pueden seleccionar y presionar para español. Gracias.
Okay. It looks like we are all here present tonight. The board did meet in closed session and we discussed items of anticipated litigation and some personnel items. Do we have consensus on the order of business?
Madam President?
Yeah.
We have our auditor here this evening, and I was hopeful that if the board's up for that, to move his presentation just after public comment and before superintendent's updates.
Is that acceptable to everyone? Okay.
Thank
We will
you.
do that. Get him in and out. All right, great. So then our next item is our student representatives to the board. Welcome, Atticus. We love seeing you.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank you.
coming.
All right. Hello, everyone. It's actually one of the busiest times at SLO High this week, so I'll just jump right into it. Last Friday, we had our winter rally. We were lucky enough to host Alana and Michaela at SLO High last week to kind of see how the rally went. So it was great to have them there. And the rally was a great time. We were super focused on like highlighting our winter athletics as well as our upcoming winter formal dance. So we had a lot of athletes compete in rally games that were, both entertaining and super action packed. So I think that the rally kept up the high expectations that the last one set. And, as an ASB, we're super proud of it. So super glad that that went down. And then, like I said, winter formal is this Saturday. We are doing pretty well on ticket sales. So it's looking like it's going to be a pretty action packed dance. We are doing a spirit week as well this week. Our concept was rivals week. So yesterday we did style swap, which was my favorite. Basically, you find a friend to switch styles with, or even switch clothes if you want to go that far. But everyone just kind of wore what their friends looked like, and it was super fun to watch. And then today was country versus country club, which is pretty self-explanatory. Tomorrow will be night shift versus day shift. So pajamas versus a suit and tie. I'll clearly obviously be going with the suit and tie, go pretty dapper. And then Thursday will be rap versus pop stars, which will be right on theme for our winter formal playlist. And then Friday will be the classic black versus gold. So super excited for the Spirit Week to see how it all pans out. Everyone will have a blast, so super great. And then also we have our winter athletics senior nights going on right now. Last week we had wrestling on Wednesday night. Friday night was boys soccer. Tonight, actually, as we're speaking, girls soccer and boys basketball have their senior nights. And then on Friday, girls basketball will have their senior night, which is a pretty big game for them. I think if they win it, they're kind of solidifying themselves as winning league. So super excited for that. And then also kind of highlighting other talented SLO High students. This week is VAPA week, which is Visual and Performing Arts week. So we've kind of spent the whole week dedicated to acknowledging and kind of just congratulating our artists at our school who are extremely talented on how hard they work and what they do. And then Friday, we're going to have an assembly where the band will play for the entire school. So that'll be really great. And then also just a few smaller things that I want to highlight. Last Friday was also our Student Month Barbecue, which we do monthly. I know I talk about those a lot, but I do think that they're really great to highlight the teachers and students who work hard in the classroom. So that was a great time. And then also we had our Poetry Out Loud competition last week. We had 3 finalists. Poetry Out Loud is like a poetry recital competition for those who don't know. We had 3 finalists. Ainsley Stevens was 3rd place, Charlie Beck was 2nd, and our very own junior class officer, Dawson Senes, won the final, I guess. And he'll be competing in the county tournament on February 21st. So that's all I have for everyone. thank you so much. And yeah, go Tigers.
Yeah, Mr. Buckman.
Yeah, I'd like pictures of the style change.
You can follow them. I've been following it on Instagram.
All right,
Yeah,
so
yeah, the style.
first you'll have to teach me what Instagram is.
is.
But then the other thing is I'd really like to suggest to the board that at our next meeting, we do a style change. I'd like to switch with Marilyn if I can, but something we can discuss.
Yeah.
Do I get to be a part of the style change as well? Okay, great.
Yeah, thank you so much. We really love, yeah,
And-
Mrs. Roger.
Thank you. I just, I've thought this a number of times and I never said it out loud, but I just feel compelled to. You are a wonderful extemporaneous speaker.
Oh, thank you so
You know,
much.
You have no notes and you have great flow, you have great retention. It's a pleasure to listen to you.
Wow.
And I just want to make sure that you know that.
Wow. That means so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I really
Pleasure.
appreciate that.
Dr. Prater. Oh, and then Mr. Banfield. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say you make it sound so exciting. Yeah, it's like, man, I want to be there.
No, you better believe it. Yeah, it's a great time over at SLO High. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I was in a wonderful meeting with a teacher last week. And out of the blue, she mentioned your name,
Really?
your former elementary teacher, Ms. Haas.
Oh, wow.
And she just spoke about you from beginning to end about how amazing you are. So have you decided on Drexel?
I have not. Yeah, I'm really still waiting on like kind of the decision process. I'm super excited to look forward to like, the UC is coming out. And kind of, I think it'd be like early April, and seeing all my options and making a pick, but it's definitely up there. That'd be super exciting.
Well, Atticus, well done.
Well, thank
You're
you.
a great kid.
And you have to keep us posted.
Okay. I,
Very important that you keep us posted.
I really
Yeah,
appreciate
we
you guys,
love-
seriously.
Yeah, no, what you do with us is for us and the information you provide is really wonderful.
Thank you so much.
So as always, we know your heart is here with us, but that you have other things you need to be paying attention to.
I got to catch senior night.
You got to
My-
catch senior
my
night.
boys are out
It's
there
very
giving their
important.
heart. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Atticus. Thanks for taking the time, especially on senior night. Thanks. Morro Bay High is not with us tonight. As students, they are being completely represented by their principal, Mr. Scaldi, who is going to be student and principal, give us all sorts of information about Morro Bay High.
Yeah, he gave him the night off.
Yeah,
I thought that
know.
was very magnanimous of him. But anyway, we're very excited to have Morro Bay High represented here tonight, and Principal Scott Scaldi will give us some highlights of Morro Bay High. Mr. Scaldi.
Hey, thank you, board. I am super excited about the opportunity to chat with you for 5 minutes. That is my goal. I did give our student reps the night off. I just want to say that we as a high school have an advantage. When Michaela, Alana, or Nev come, they're super enthusiastic and encompassing with what they share about what's going on at Morro Bay High School. For me tonight, I want to talk about a few things, and really I want to talk about how it's going. When I came to Morro Bay High School, I asked our whole staff to agree and believe in 5 things. These are the 5 things I want us to look through as we navigate everything. And the first is overarching. It's our number 1. It's our true north. Relationships. Number 1, the relationships that we create and cultivate with our students are the most important thing we do. That takes precedence over everything. And then we have 4 others that are equivalent and they're just below that. And the 4 others are every kid deserves rigor, relevance, and support. We focus on mastery, not memory. No student is an SEP. Stole that from John Calandro. SEP is someone else's problem. An EL student is not the EL department's problem. A student with an IEP is not the IEP manager's problem. And that leads us to the 5th one, which is we're a team. We work as a team. And so this year in the fall, I shared a communication more than once, but explicitly with our school community regarding the plans to strengthen Morro Bay High School. Safety was at the core, but there were many areas we wanted to really improve. And so we adopted the mantra, raising the bar. So with my 5 minutes, I'd like to highlight how it's going by just sharing Youth Truth Survey data. I think it validates that we're doing pretty good. And it's not the student survey I want to talk about. It's the family survey and the staff survey. And we've given each of those only 3 years, but I do have some historical data. And so the family survey, we had more families respond than ever before. It's like 227. It's a pretty good sample for a school of 800. And so here's the summary. I think there's 58 questions, but on 96.4% of the questions, the scores were higher this year than last year. When we compare ourselves nationally in the survey, here's our top 5. Number 1, and this is our families. Number 1, teachers and students care about each other. For a guy who says we should do relationships, I feel grateful. I feel engaged in my school was number 2. Number 3, I feel comfortable approaching the school administration about my concerns. Number 4, my school creates a friendly environment. And number 5, I'm proud of my school. Those were our top 5, 1 through 5 nationally. The number 5 is a big deal to me. I felt like that's what we need a lot of at Morro Bay. To have our families have that in the top 5, that was great. Within the survey itself, we often look where our benchmarks are. Where's our biggest gain and our highest marks? Not nationally, but for us. And so I have those 5. And so I feel proud of my school. My school runs smoothly. Discipline is fair at my school. I believe in my school's mission, and my school respects people of different religions, abilities, genders, races, ethnicities, and incomes. I'm grateful that our families are feeling this and they're sharing it in an anonymous survey that I think is valid. Okay, good. So now on to staff. So our staff, same thing. So on the survey, I think there's 59 questions on that one. 91.4% of the questions were higher this year than last year. Nationally ranked, here's our top 5. Number 1, I feel comfortable approaching the administration if I need help solving a problem. Yes, I'm grateful. That's super exciting to know that that's number 1. Number 2, administrators treat staff with respect. Number 3, staff treat administrators with respect. Number 4, my school is managed effectively. Number 5, staff and administrators care about each other. Those are our top 5 ranked nationally. Again, when we look at ourselves versus ourselves, where was our biggest growth and our high water marks? The top 5 are these. I understand my school's goals. Grateful for that. My school is cooperative and team oriented. My school runs smoothly. Discipline is fair in my school. I feel empowered to play a meaningful role in the decision-making at my school. So my highlights are, it's going okay. We still have work to do. We're still raising the bar. That's what I got.
Mr. Scaldi, remind us of how long you've been principal at Morro Bay High School.
This is my 2nd year. And yes, we do have a lot of new people, and that's a key factor. Both my assistant principals are new. I have a new athletic director. I have 2 counselors. One of them is new. We shift from one ASB director who was awesome to another one that had been ASB director in the past. There's a lot of new players in play. So there was a lot on the board. And I'm grateful. Doesn't mean the work's not done. It means we're doing okay so far.
Well, it sounds like you're taking great advantage of your opportunity to build an effective team. So yeah, keep up the good work. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you,
Scott.
board. I appreciate the
Yeah,
opportunity.
no, thank you. Thanks very much. All right, next is item 6.03, an annual report by the County Superintendent of Schools.
Oh, he's in front of you.
Yeah,
Okay.
Dr. Brescia, who in my day job is also my boss. So thank you for coming tonight.
Good evening, Superintendent Prater, members of the board. It's good to see you tonight. Part of my constitutional obligation as a state officer is to annually report to each school board on the status of schools throughout the county and to respond to any questions that you may have. And first off, I'd like to report that all of our LEAs are fiscally solvent. I've just reviewed the interim reports again, looking at a couple of AB 1200s that have crossed my desk. We are working with one of the charters on a long-term fiscal plan, but all of our LEAs are in good shape right now. I'm very happy to hear that and see that as I review their books. We had a successful state budget summit with capital advisors where all of the LEAs were in attendance, as well as the SELPA, getting an update from capital advisors on the state budget. And then the following day, both Senator Laird and Assemblymember Addis joined us to discuss some options and opportunities. We're in a unique position right now because our state senator is on education appropriations and our state assembly member for our area is on higher ed. So if we look at Cuesta, especially as our CTE matriculation, and moving in those programs and dual enrollment. We have an advocate really on both ends of the spectrum for us right now in Sacramento. We had a very well-attended, newly elected and appointed trustee dinner last night, and President Sheffer, thank you so much for leading that with the group. And we had multiple veteran school board members, a president from Templeton, as well as a president from Lucia Mar, sit in groups. And I think we had 14 or 15 of the 16 or 17 total newly elected appointed trustees in attendance, as well as a few veterans. The purpose of this was to orient new trustees in the county to what we can do, how the county office can support them, how our legal consortium can support them, and allow them to network with each other in a collaborative manner. And that's going very well. We have an all trustee superintendent dinner scheduled for the 27th of this month, and your superintendent will invite any and all of you that wish to attend that. A little larger, we'll again have legal there and be able to answer questions. So hopefully you can attend that. An exciting endeavor that our office embarked on as we changed this year. I pledged $500,000 a year out of the County Office of Education budget to match any of the LEAs that are investing in employees in terms of recruitment and retention. And I say employees, not just educators or administrators. If you're training someone in food service or you're training someone in administration, if you place dollars into supporting those individuals, the county office will match that. And at this point, we've had about 420,000 in requests across the county. And I anticipate that we'll be able to continue that and add to those funds. In addition to that, I will receive notification this week that we had the classified to certificated grant reauthorized. So that will be coming out to all of your HR directors throughout the county, that we can pay for classified employees that wish to move into certificated ranks. So I'm very happy about that, as well as the early childhood education opportunities. So starting with this fiscal year, moving into others, we have close to $1 million of money that we can invest in upskilling local people that live here that want to work in our agency. So I'm very happy about that. The two other things that I wanted to highlight and then take any questions. I'm continuing to pledge funds for arts. So if you're any of your school principals or any of the agencies I know several of your sites are already taking us up on that. We will fund arts outreach. There's something going on at Cuesta coming up with Michael Novak, and you just need to get there and the county office will pay the fees. So I've had 2 successful grants. I sit on a few foundation boards out of San Francisco, and they've been very supportive in providing arts outreach for young people. Our career technical ed apprenticeship program through SLO Partners is full for this term, and we're already taking applications for next term. That is self-sufficient and operating very effectively right now. And finally, outdoor education. Kern County partnered with us just before the pandemic began, and we merged. So Kern County is operating Rancho El Chorro. It is full every day throughout the school year, and with students from our county and students from the adjacent county. So the outdoor education program continues. I'm very happy to see that. And the last item I wanted to touch on was our prototype for employee housing has been successful. We have 1 unit that is fully occupied right now with a member of our food service staff, and 6 more that are in the planning phase with the County of San Luis Obispo right now. Hopefully will be approved, and then we'll do a tour of anyone who'd like to see those. We're repurposing modular buildings, modular classroom buildings. I think we obtained a few from your district, a few from Lucia Mar, and a few from Paso. They've all been parked on the property up there, and we're just waiting for final permits to start renovating those, turning them into 12 to 1,300 square foot 3-2s for individuals to rent for up to 5 years in hopes that they can get into the market. Our property, with the exception of Shalam and or Parkfield, excuse me, and Carissa Plains, is almost 45 minutes or less from any school site in the county. So and this would be open to school employees, not just limited to County Office of Ed. So that was my short report for you, just sort of an update since we spoke last year, and I'll entertain any questions you may have.
Any questions from the board? Mr. Buckman?
First of all, thank you for this great summary in such a short time. You do a lot of work and I'm sure we barely touched on it. I'm very interested in the staff housing. When I worked at the county office, in my mind, there's 270 acres between Highway 1 and 101 going up that hillside. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, yes, but about half of that falls in the non-coastal commission zone. So we need to get beyond the coastal commission really to move this through with the county. And the biggest challenge is water.
Okay. So, and we know we're talking about staff housing because that's the prospect of using that property for. Sorry. I can hear myself fine. The prospect for staff housing just in that location is just absolutely amazing. Just everything's there. It'd just be wonderful.
It is.
I would
The
like to-
biggest challenge is the water, though. I mean, I do think we're capped at how many we can do. The idea was to put a prototype together that other agencies could follow.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, Mrs. Roger.
Hello, Dr. Brescia.
Hi there. Nice to
Thanks
see
for
you.
coming. In your remarks, you indicated, I think if I understood it correctly, that there was money available for professional development for what I interpreted to be classified employees as well.
Employees. So I want to just back up. Employees, period.
Okay.
If your LEA, and they are, your LEA has requested, I don't know, close to $100,000 probably of money that they're investing in employees to upskill, to obtain certification. It could be anything from obtaining a bus driver's license, getting your administrative credential. I didn't put any restrictions on it other than we will match up to a percentage based on your LEA size of what you invest.
So in our SEIU contract, help me out here, Mr. Pinkerton, we do have money, some minor monies, but money available for SEIU employees to take advantage of professional development. So what Dr. Brescia is saying is that he has actually additional money available if they were interested in pursuing it.
And we're taking it.
Oh, and we're taking it.
Yeah. so
No,
I'll
no,
have
your
Mr. Block-
district has put in the requests.
Yeah,
I was simply letting you know it was there.
I'll have Mr. Block update the board on kind of where the money's flowing, the requests, those types of things. But absolutely.
Okay.
If anything, we've had to try to figure out who's going to get it. So, because there's been so many requests and kind of breaking that out, but I'll have Mr. Block share that with you.
So, well, I thank the county office for
Yeah.
Making that available.
Well, I think it
Two
benefits
LEAs.
all of us. And I believe your district took its full, requested more than its allocation. The way we did is we proportionally divided it up among LEA size. And if an LEA didn't request all their funds, it will go back into the pool for any additional requests. So
I'm
the idea,
surprised that we asked for more. We're typically so shy about requesting things.
you might very well say that I couldn't possibly comment.
It's
Thank you.
just our fair share, Dr. Brescia, our fair share. Anyone else? Yes, Ms. Dover Drew.
How will the employees be informed that they have these opportunities?
Are you talking about the scholarship or I believe each HR office has let employees know that if you're wishing to get training, I know that's how it's happening in my agency, but each district is probably handling it differently. All of the HR departments, all the superintendents have been informed, and I believe it may have been announced at the school board presidents that this is available. And I've put it in a couple of my journal articles. We've tried to get it out there to let people know that we have money to train you if you want to serve in our profession. I actually had 2 people email me after the last SLO County Journal article saying they were interested in subbing. So,
And the word's
Great.
out.
And
will
I
let you
see,
know.
I
So
see
we-
Mr. Block nodding,
Yeah.
nodding behind you back there.
HR news, we have our HR news that goes out monthly. So, our information, staff communications, but like I said, there's been more then we can even handle it. So it's definitely, the word's out there, people know about it, they're inquiring about it. And then our hope would be that, the people that maybe don't get funded this year, we can fund next year, but looking at, there's educator effectiveness funds, there's other things too that we can even do outside of what the county's offering to support our staff.
Sounds great. Great opportunities there.
Okay. Anything else?
Okay,
Thank
just
you.
thank you again for your service as trustees. It is very important. I said this last night at our gathering that this and city councils are two of the few local governance capacities that people can serve in, and you're part of a group of the largest legislative governing body in the country, if you think about it. So again, thank you, Dr. Prater, and your staff for everything you're doing. Wonderful evening.
Thanks for coming. Thank you. Next is correspondence. And at the time we met, we had received official correspondence from John Paul Dreher with regard to substitute teachers. And that's the only correspondence we received at the time of the meeting. Next is 7.02 public comment. And at this point in the agenda, we welcome comments or on matters of district interest. The board will listen closely to your comments, but we are not allowed to engage in discussion or take action on items not listed on the agenda due to the Brown Act. Total time for each speaker is 3 minutes. We will have a counter appear on the screen, a 3-minute countdown. And this is for items that are not on the agenda at this time. If something appears on the agenda at a later time that you would like to speak about, you could wait for it to be until we're discussing that topic. Or if you don't wish to stay for the whole meeting and wish to address the board now, you may certainly do so. If you do wish to address the board, we have cards at the back table there, if you wouldn't mind to fill one out. And then we will announce when either the agenda topic has come up and we'll ask you to come to the podium. Mrs. Roger, I believe you have a yellow sheet.
I do. I have a request to address the board from J.P. Dreher. And the subject matter is employee purchasing power in high inflation and inclusive safety planning with all stakeholders. Mr. Dreher.
And your 3 minutes is beginning now.
Hi, this is the first time I've spoken to the board. I've sent comments before when it was online. My name is John Paul Dreher. I'm a former college trustee. I'm a former San Luis Obispo County College Citizens Bond Committee member. I'm also, during the pandemic, when the teacher shortage started, I came out of teaching retirement to help out with our district. And I started subbing online with Zoom teaching. And I thank Scott for helping me with Zoom teaching when I was at Laguna Middle School. Now that we can see each other's faces, makes it a little bit easier to recognize people. I'm very concerned, someone who has a credential in economics, the highest inflation in 40 years, employee morale, the high cost of gas and eggs even. We need, if we're discussing employee raises, I hope they're going to be retroactive to when the height of the inflation started this summer, like back in August. I hope that you'll consider that in your closed session discussions or administrative discussions. But this is a high priority for all employees who are, raising a family or taking care of loved ones. A lot of things in the news have concerned me as an educator, and having worked in another district, there's different ways of doing school safety. One way for secondary, but not for elementary. The same standards we have for secondary education safety should be also the standard for our middle schools, our alternative schools, and for elementary schools, to make sure that employees, community volunteers, and students are safe And that as an Eagle Scout, I try to be prepared. I try my best. And I hope that our school district will be prepared for, any possibility to protect the people who work in schools and our students who learn in our schools. And we need to have an inclusive process when we're meeting with our consultant in determining the needs of our schools and also looking what's happening across the country. I taught current events. I read the newspaper. I read several newspapers a day, and I'm really concerned about the safety of our children and all of us that work with them. So I hope that you will consider this deeply to protect everyone on our campuses and to be fully prepared for any thing that happens. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the board at this time and during general public comment? All right, Ms. Dawson, is there anyone on Zoom? All right, thank you so much. In accordance with the revision to the order of business, we will now have our audit discussion.
Okay, so I'm going to introduce Brian Ruff, who is our auditor, and also Katie Ekman, our Director of Fiscal Services. And since we have a couple of new board members, I'm going to have Katie give you a quick rundown of what happens when we have an audit. Now, how does it affect staff? What do they do? How does it happen? And then I'm going to have Brian kind of talk a little bit about why do we do audits? What's the purpose of them? What information do they gather, right? And then he'll go ahead and share both the fiscal audit report for the school district for the year. And then after that, present the Measure D audit, both financial and performance audit. So Katie.
All right. So we have an audit that's done every year. It goes from July 1st to June 30th is our fiscal year period. The auditors will come once in late spring, early summer, and then they come again in late fall, usually the end of September through maybe the first week of November. And when they come in late spring, early summer, they're looking for things that don't necessarily have to have a fiscal year-end close. So they can start looking at our attendance. They look at sometimes our deposits and our receipts. They're going through different line items where they're required to not only from the state that has their audit guidelines, but also making sure that we're following our process and procedures correctly as far as purchasing goes. They're looking at our warrants. They're looking to make sure that we have all the proper authorizations when it comes to from a requisition all the way until it becomes a PO. And then when they come back in the fall at year end, they're doing a lot of compliance. They're looking at our federal, they're looking at our states. One year they might be focused on special education. And then the next year the state might say, okay, we want you to look at food services. And so there's different sections that they go through each year. They can't hit every area or they would still be digging in our books, but they do a sampling size, and Brian could maybe get into that further, how that's determined. But they do take a sample of all of our accounts payable, all of our deposits, any cash that flows through. They look at reconciliations for various accounts, any checking accounts we have, and like I said, attendance, ASB. So we all know that's been a new compliance change for our district. And they also, as new laws come up, for like GASB 87 for leases and compliance, they ensure we're doing the most update compliance and following those processes and procedures. So that's kind of what they're looking at. From our perspective, we're pulling things constantly for them, uploading to a portal that they have throughout that timeline. And the goal is when they come that week, we block out that time, get them as much information as possible. And then they'll go back, they keep digging and doing their testing. And sometimes they might have follow-up. Sometimes they're good if their testing goes as planned, and then they produce an audit. And then that's where Brian comes in with his information. And one thing, in September, I bring you the unaudited actuals. What I submit and share to you, I submit to the county office, which eventually submits to CDE, is the unaudited actuals that follows the SACS codes that are deemed by the state. It's the 22 digits. And that is how we track things in our financial statements. And that's how we report to the state. Brian takes that data and does some other kind of magic with it. And that's what he's going to talk about.
All right, thank you, Katie. Thank you, Ryan. First, just I need to acknowledge their team and everything that they do for us and providing that information that we do require for the audit. It's quite a process and it's expanding more and more every year. Thankfully, we're out of this pandemic where we're back and we're here in person. Where it hits last is in the financial side and the compliance side. You get the money, you implement the programs, and that's where I step in and I need to look at it. I need to make sure that you're compliant with the spending of the funds that have been received by the state and federal governments, as well as continued proper fiscal reporting of those funds. So that's our part in the audit, and those are the opinions that we render in the audit report. This past year, Katie hit on it. There was a new implementation standard regarding accounting for leases. Quite an undertaking. Your district was very proactive in using some much needed services because there's a lot of information required for those lease reporting and accounting aspects that ultimately end up in this report. So we're talking not only what you would think of as debt, capital type leases, we're also talking about money that the district receives in the form of a lessor, which is also being reported in the financials. So to sum up your report, probably the best page to reference is in the back of the report. And if you have that in front of you, that is page 93. And it's exactly that summary of auditors' results. So we have three main areas that we're reporting on here, and we have, just to begin, the financial statement audit. You see at the top there, it's an unmodified opinion. Essentially, it's a clean audit opinion. It didn't have specific issues, restatements to talk about that were errors and things of that nature. There was an error that we reported as a finding. And the wording's a little harsh because it's required. It's somewhat boilerplate in this regard, but it was I would say just a simple oversight in recording funds for student bodies in the general fund where they should have been pulled out and reported in the ASB fund. So in my view, not a huge item in my experience of all the audits I do. Your district is very fortunate to have quality staff because you traditionally do have very clean reports from the years that I've been doing audits for the district. Have a couple site level comments in the form of a management letter in the very back. We just want to make sure that everybody's aware, we have to continue to maintain controls at school sites, and as spending is starting again and we're back in business, they need to follow those ASB accounting procedures as well. And we do check those annually. Questions from the board?
First of all, I'm going to go to the public, or is there anyone from the public who would like to have a comment on this item to address the board at this time? Mr. Dreyer?
Oh, yes.
I wonder if the auditor can cite any improvements that could take place besides that in their professional opinion.
No, I would say that just to continue to monitor new accounting standards that do come down the pipe. Next year, there's another audit standard keeping us in business, and it's related to subscription-based items such as software that the district uses throughout its school sites and its business department. And that's a huge undertaking as well. And I believe, Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, you're one of the few that I have that's already on track with that. So you're being very proactive with that.
We're working on it.
Yeah.
It's difficult at times because they tell you what you have to do, but there's nothing that shows you how to do it, right? So you kind of have to figure it out. So in some ways, sometimes we actually have worked with the audit, company had them come in, help us look at the leases to make sure we're doing it right, so that we don't have findings. But it seems like it's just government expansion in terms of, now it's leases, now it's copiers, now it's early sites, now it's going to be software. And so just, again,
Yeah,
keeping the auditors in place, right? But
That's
there's
correct.
ever
So-
growing this, I think almost, people are worried about how government agencies spend money. Right? So that's just part of, kind of how this goes.
The disclosure in an audit report is ever expanding. It's and it goes back 20 years or more when we went into this government-wide fiscal approach where we started reporting pension liabilities and capital assets and all sorts of things that if you've been around in the business for a while, you're traditionally just used to the general fund and the other funds maintained for the various operations of the district. With this full reporting, it doesn't show necessarily your operational effects, but it does give you a snapshot as a general picture to where you sit with all the liabilities and all the assets similar to a business, but realizing that a school district does not operate in that manner. The school district still reports to the board, most importantly on the fund level. The audit report, and as Katie mentioned, we sprinkled pixie dust on it. There's a lot of supporting data to it and things that go into what we derive as a government-wide statement in the form of conversion entries that occur from those fund accounts that you view in the unaudited actuals. So a lot goes into that.
We have a strong fiscal team I'll add for the board. Ask the secretaries at school sites next time you go around about our fiscal department, how tough they are. Ask Mr. Mayfield, right? So, just making sure, the budget, is it right? Is it correct? Are you budgeting the right way? Do you have the numbers? Have the right people signed off? Have we gone through, it's, they're tough, right? Because they have to answer to the auditors twice a year
Yeah,
for that information. So that's why they are as strict and as, cumbersome at times to get things through. Though, we do our best to make it as, easy as possible for people to get what they need right at school sites. But there's a lot that goes into it. Again, we're not a business that's writing off their taxes. So we're not looking at depreciated assets and how we can write things off and what we can. But yeah, we have to do an audit that takes all of that into account, right? Even though really, do I really care how much our schools are valued at or how much they depreciated over the year? Or it doesn't really affect our bottom line on a day-to-day basis, right? So it can be very confusing. Mr. Buckman had some great questions that kind of came out, that because it's, so some of the information or the way that the auditor pulls it together is very different than the actual physical. This is what we got. This is what we spent. And so.
And it's even very difficult to compare, say, your district with another district because circumstances for a similar sized district may be very different. You may have land in this district that's valued at $1,000 from many years ago, and it's recorded at historical cost. But when you purchase a property, it's valued at millions of dollars. So it's hard to do a comparative analysis in that regard in a government-wide financial statement, but it does give you some inkling of what the fiscal impacts down the road could be for pensions and for OPEB liabilities, things that hit you every year as a pay-as-you-go type item, and that's why rates are increasing every year. And
Mr. Buckman pointed out one aspect where it showed kind of our net position declined by $26 million. Well, that's because we spent bond funds. There was no revenue, right? Because we already had our bond funds allocated, right? So here, and so those are the types of things that it seemed like, what? Like we're losing money? How come we're not worth as much? But it's very different than the kind of the unaudited actuals, fiscal budget of the school district.
Before I bring it back to the board, anyone else from the public, either present here or on Zoom, Ms. Dawson? All right, discussion by the board, Mr. Unger.
So thinking about our ASB funds and our school site funds, because that, it's nice to see that we didn't have any problems with that other than this minor placing money in the wrong, which didn't affect. our
Journal
bottom line
entry
at all.
that got fixed. Yeah.
But it seems to me that an area of weakness in most school districts and one that we've seen in the past is with the ASB funds.
Mhm.
So what kinds of things do we do to assure that our staff is well trained, that we don't have those kind of errors which show up as but not auditing errors, but findings?
And Katie can talk a little bit about from her team. Go ahead.
Yeah, so what we did at the end of last month in January, we had so we have 4 ASB clerks. Well, 2 are site secretary at the middle schools and then that also do ASB. And then we have 2 ASB clerks at the high schools. We sent them with 2 people from my staff to an ASB Works conference. That's the software we utilize, but it talks about common problems. It talks about areas like to strengthen and just different, you network and find out what other sites are doing. FICMAT is there because we default to the FICMAT manual for all of our processes and procedures. So they're there to talk about the manual. And then what we started doing last year, and we're going to continue this year, like my staff is meeting with all of the ASB staff tomorrow. They're coming to our office and we're doing a recap of the conference they went to and then talking about things specific to our district. And then I meet with them quarterly. And so if they have things that they want to bring up or areas of concern, I meet with them. I find out what those areas are. And if I need more guidance, then, I meet with Ryan and we go over it. But we're constantly working and in communication with our ASB. So hopefully that keeps our findings to a minimum.
We also tied the principals into those conversations too, because ultimately at the end of the day, they're responsible for their school site and what happens on their school site. So, but you get new club advisors every year, new coaches, so it's a constant training. Honestly, it's just constantly, they have to overemphasize the rules again. And then for those ASB, both brand new at the 2 comprehensive high schools. So we spent a lot of time with them in the spring into the fall, throughout the year, right? To make sure that they understand that we support them. And if they're seeing something, that just let us know. We'll get on it with the administrators. We'll talk about it. We'll, help the teachers out, whatever we need to do to make sure we get to that point. But oftentimes, like the management findings, those are things that our staff found and they tell the auditor, so they'll put it in, right? So that we're overemphasizing what needs to be done, right? So that we, we're on top of it. But it's ongoing.
Thank you.
And the FICMAT rules are really extensive. I mean, it's 100 pages of the types of things you're supposed to do. And at the center of ASB, it's kids. So they're supposed to have a club, an advisor. They're supposed to, do a ledger. What are they raising money for? Then they're supposed to budget. Then they're supposed to raise funds. And then they're supposed to spend them and sign off on it. And the principal signs off, and the ASB director. So, I mean, it's supposed to be very extensive in terms of the rules and regulations. So we're trying to maintain that.
Anyone else? Mr. Buckman.
First of all, I want to thank Katie. So I went through this pretty carefully and asked Katie, I think probably 20 questions, and it took us an hour. It was really well spent time for me, but I'm not sure Katie needed to spend an hour, but it was really important. And I just kind of want to make sure that I understand what Katie was trying to teach me. And so I'm just going to ask some of the questions again to make sure that I understand. And then also just if there's some way in the future that when I get to page 9, I don't see something that says we lost $4 million somehow. And when I've listened to staff in the fall, and I have complete trust in staff saying we're fine. And I just don't know how we can somehow manage that, because what I'm a little bit afraid of is somebody picks this audit up and says, look, it's right here in black and white. You lost $4 million. When, and I guess I'm just, so I'm just looking for some kind of assurance that I understand that this is almost an entirely different kind of accounting process.
And again,
Did I get that?
we didn't
Yes, and
lose, we didn't
I mean,
lose
I
4
can't-
million, again, we didn't lose $4 million,
Right.
right? But our net position
Whatever that is.
might have dropped $4 million because we spent $26 million
Yeah.
in bond funds. And so the amount of money we had in the bank dropped, right? Because we spent all those bond funds. So it kind of, it varies depending on looking at that chart, the pros and cons. So I think that's the end of the day to remember for the board. There's a lot of it's like that net value and appreciation, depreciation, things that they look at. It's not the actual money that we have in the bank, right? There's one part too that took into the account the drop in the value of the funds that we have in the county treasury. Right? Remember?
Yep.
We had that, had to change it at the end of the year, but then the first day in July, we put it back in. So there's all those things kind of are taken into account and looking at it, but it is confusing. I mean, I will, from like Mr.
But-
Bug said, there's some confusing parts of it.
So, so for me, one of the confusing things was one of the early tables in here shows instruction related cost of services. Actually, it went down almost $3 million, but administration might have gone up almost $1 million on table 3. And Katie explained this to me. I don't know if anybody else got stuck on that. I got a little stuck on that because I don't think that that's the philosophy. I know it's not the philosophy of the board. I know it's not the philosophy of our superintendents, but there it is. And so I just need some help understanding how that could happen.
Yes.
And I appreciate the references to magic and pixie dust, and I listen to Harry Potter a lot for several generations now, but I just don't, for me, audits and budgets are not magic and pixie dust.
Right. No, I agree with that. So it goes back to what I was saying about the government-wide presentation versus the fund level presentation. So when you look at, say, a first or second interim report, the numbers are the actual numbers. When you look at this first part of the report that summarizes information in a government-wide perspective, the cost allocations will be driven by such things as investment earnings in a pension pool, things of that nature that will then require an allocation of cost or a deduction of that allocation of cost, whichever way the pools go for the year. And I know that's confusing. It's very confusing if you are used to operating on, hey, this is just, let me look at the numbers here without seeing all that backup of how it's being derived. But there's many components, depreciation on capital assets. Those are costs that you don't see in your unaudited actuals, but those are costs that are being allocated to those functions, as we call it, where you say administrative and instruction, those various functions that you're referring to, those costs are being allocated based on the use of those facilities. So a district office, let's say, is being depreciated. There's a lot of administrative allocation of cost related to that, but you're not actually spending out of pocket those costs as you would be in the general fund. So we're taking what you do in the general fund and the other funds of the district, and we are converting that information based on those long-term aspects and components that I'm speaking about into a government-wide presentation. And it's not easy to understand that unless you've really been looking. It takes a while to kind of get where it's coming from. You'd really have to see how that detail comes about.
So sorry, so I hear that, and I just want to share with you, because unfortunately you have to write this according to code, but I have to read it. So here's a sentence out of here, right? I can't even sure. Net position, net of investment in capital assets consists of capital assets, net of accumulated depreciation. I mean, I really tried to figure it out, but I couldn't. And so I just don't know. I
One
just don't
thing-
know how to do this.
What he's maybe explaining, maybe trying through a different way is there is a page in here that lists all of our fund balances, right? I
Right.
tie that to the SACS report. That's my check and balance on their work. When they've pulled all this information, they combine funds that we don't, we present to you fund by fund by fund. So I reconcile to that. And if there's a difference, it better be in an audit adjustment. And we had one, it was for the leases. And so I was able to tie to the number in this book where it talks about fund balances. What all of the other pages in this is what he's saying is he's taking information that we've provided in SACS, but pulling it by the functions. So in all of this, all these numbers come out of SACS, but they're pulling out of that 22-digit string, everything that is coded roughly to a 7,000 function. That's all administrative costs, plus adding accumulative depreciation that represents that the administrative, like he was saying, buildings, our retirees. We have the OPEB that's projected out, and they tell us what percentage of that is going to be in the different areas, because we charge it back to that when we're recognizing every month the payments for retirees. We charge it back to where they worked in the building. So all of this information came from SACS, and there is one page in here that you could match up to SACS that is fund balance to fund balance. But the rest of it is pulling that same data by functions, is what he's kind of in his accounting terms saying.
And it's oftentimes when we think of administration, you're thinking of, all the principals and admin.
That's what I was thinking. yeah.
And instruction, you're thinking of teachers and classified.
Right.
So that's why I pulled up the unaudited actuals for Mr. Buckman to show, right? So the reality of what did we spend on teachers and from one year to the next. And so teachers went from 34 million to 37 million. Pupil support salaries, counselors,
And that's
Um,
considered administration.
3.9 million to 4.3 million, right? Administrator salaries, 4.6 million to 4.6 million. So he went up $9,000
Yeah.
in that year. So just, in terms of you look at the audit, you think, oh, hey, what? Why are we getting paid $3 million more and teachers are less? No, that's not what really happened,
Okay.
right? So it's very different in
I-
terms of the calculation that they're putting together.
Yeah,
Now, we could maybe do a future year, kind of
I'm-
do an education,
I
kind
have
of,
no idea.
conversation
Well,
about it. but
you're-
it's
You're
very different
definitely
than-
not alone in this because the GASB, that's our Governmental Accounting Standards Board, they are in the process. I'm not sure when it's going to be rolled out, but these financial statements, I agree, are difficult to read in its entirety. You can grasp components and you have the questions of, okay, I see the funds. How does that correlate to where we're at in the front of the report in the statement of net position versus the fund balance? And so the project is trying to streamline and make it easier to read
Great.
those things.
Great.
So you're not alone in that
Okay.
regard at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's an admirable job. And for me, I think the thing that Katie said to me, and maybe we've said it already, but I'm going to try and say it again, is we're government and we have to do things, no income, right? And this is what I'm saying. You're being asked to do this and look at us as if we're a business.
Right.
And that's the biggest difference. And it was when I finally grasped what Katie was saying to me, that's what made it but I really was going to come in here tonight and say, this is an absolute waste of time. No offense to your,
No.
to your,
But
to
I
your
think-
business, but now I,
Years.
No,
it's, this was crazy trying to read this. So I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I appreciate everything you've done, and appreciate Katie more.
Are there any other questions from the board? Any other comments? Right, this is an action item to accept or approve the audit report, the 2021-2022 audit report. Mr. Buckman?
I'd like to move that the board approve the audit report.
And I'll second.
Right. Mr. Buckman,
Aye.
Mrs. Roger,
Yes.
Mr. Banfield,
Yes.
Ms. Dobler Drew, Mr. Unger,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. All right, thank you.
So next up is Measure D,
Yes.
one more.
We do,
So,
we do
um,
even more work here.
for the public to know, we have a citizen bond oversight committee that meets quarterly and reviews all bond funds and expenditures and projects. And then we also do our annual audit. And it's two phases. One, both a financial audit, looking at, you know, how did the money come in? How did we spend it? What projects did we spend it on? All those types of things. But also they do what's called a performance audit as well, where they look at the actual bond language and ensure that the way that we spent those bond funds correlates to the bond language itself, right? So those two kind of critical things. And so Mr.
Right.
Ruff can present that tonight.
Okay, so with your Measure D bond funds, in the financial aspect of it, you have the building fund. It's identified as the building fund. This is also what we audit within the school district's report. So you have the same clean report without adjustment in the building fund. Since you've already had that audited and we're auditing separately and presenting that in the report, the biggest difference in the second report is the performance audit to make sure that funds are spent in accordance with the election ballot materials. So it's important to note that we go through all the expenditures during the year and we select items. And Katie had mentioned the talk of a sample, we pull a lot of items. This year, we reported that we tested 93% of those items. You don't always get to a high level like that, but you may have had some much higher cost on specific, a number of items that were just very high dollar in the projects that were being completed during the year. So 40 transactions to 93% of total expenditures were tested, and they were all allowable cost to the election materials.
Thank you.
Yes.
Anyone from the public wishing to comment on this? Mr. Dreyer?
With the Measure D funds or all the funds for the last fiscal year, the projects done on time and under budget. Were the change orders out of the ordinary? Is there room for improvement for this coming fiscal year? Thank you.
Mr. Pinkerton, perhaps you could address this in your Measure D superintendent's update.
Sounds
Does
good.
that make sense?
Will do.
Okay, thank you. Any question, any other, that fits more in with that, Mr. Dreyer, if you don't mind waiting for a few minutes. Any other questions or comments from the public via Zoom or otherwise? See, no one will come back to the board. Any questions or comments from the board? And this is an action item to approve this audit as well.
Move approval of item number of, I don't know the item number of the Measure D audit report for our building funds.
Second.
I'll second that.
Oh, I think Ms. Dobler Drew seconded that. Jump in there a little quicker, Mr. Banfield. All right, Mr. Unger. Ms. Dobler Drew. Mrs. Roger.
Yes.
Mr. Banfield.
Yes.
Mr. Buckman.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. I know this, it's a learning curve for all of us, and we appreciate your patience in helping to explain some of these things.
Well, we appreciate serving the district in this regard.
Now you get to go do the same thing at Lucy and Mar.
That's right.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for coming tonight. All right, our next, now we'll go to our updates. So, starting with business and budget, Mr. Pinkerton.
Yeah, so as Dr. Brescher said, we had a great meeting with capital advisors last week. Mrs. Sheffer board president, was able to be there as well. Kind of heard a lot about the governor's budget impacts, kind of the politics behind things that are going on. So it was a positive meeting, and so that's it. working on staffing now with sites.
That's
You know,
that time
getting
of
getting
year.
that information out to principals, both, all TK-12, right? So that Mr. Block with HR can begin to hire, and if we have some teachers we're going to bring back, or all those types of things, we want to secure people and definitely be able to recruit as soon as possible.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Frost.
Yes, two updates, both from the middle level. Our avid 7th and 8th graders from both Los Osos and Laguna Middle Schools were at Cal Poly's College Readiness for Avid Middle Schoolers event at the end of January. And they went with middle schoolers from across the county. And from what I understand, had just an inspiring day. They attended a Q&A with a first generation college student panel. They participated in a college readiness trivia relay, and it was moderated by Cal Poly admissions officers. They toured the campus, they visited the bookstore, they had a lunch with all of the Cal Poly Avid students. So it was just really a wonderful opportunity for them to learn more about college applications, find that this is something that they can really aspire to do, and honestly see an amazing college in our own backyard. So it was a great opportunity. Second and final thing, CTE middle school modules begin. So on Monday evening, we kicked off our CTE middle school evening modules at SLO High. So picture Laguna Middle School students going to the high school 2 nights a week and participating in CTE modules. We had students in the automotive shop becoming acquainted with the various tools and workings of the shop. Next door in the robotics lab, a group of students began to learn more about aviation and engineering from our Cal Poly fellows. A third cohort of students was busy in the multimedia center at SLO High, learning the inner workings of graphic design. And on Thursday evening, we have another cohort starting, and that is photography and design. So a wonderful opportunity that is starting with Laguna Middle School going to SLO High, but then we want to bring it to the coast and have Los Osos Middle School students go to Morro Bay High School. And it's an opportunity for our middle school students to see the CTE possibilities when they're in high school. And I want to do a shout out to Leslie O'Connor and Christine Robertson, who really spent a lot of time on this. And then Marcy Badal and Jessica Baza, that's our middle school CTE counselor, who really pulled kids together to participate in this.
Great, thank you. Mr. Pinkerton, Measure D update.
Yeah, Measure D and Measure C, right? Kind of a combo. So for Measure D, to answer Mr. Dreer's question, so we have not had to come back to the board to increase any of our GMPs through our projects over the course of the year. Now, that doesn't mean that we haven't had changes and haven't got, it's mostly modernization. So there's good and bad, right? When you're going through modernization and finding things and unknown, those types of things. But overall, we feel pretty good about kind of where we're landing with Measure D. We should be finishing up in the fall with our projects for Measure D in both comprehensive high schools, San Luis Obispo High School, Morro Bay. And so it's nice for programs like what Mrs. Frost just described, that we have beautiful facilities to go along with those programs now at both high schools. So our CBOC, just having the bond audit tonight, we'll be meeting again here in the next few weeks. Really excited about a grand opening of the theater, cafeteria, multi-purpose room, choir room, drama room, backstage area at Morro Bay High. That'll happen next month. I believe our next board meeting might be or 2 meetings from now, we'll be at that facility. So very excited about that. At San Luis Obispo High School, the middle part of the 100 building, which is food service and multi-purpose room, is very, very close, about a month away. And then students did move into the upper level of the 100 building. So some beautiful classrooms with great, unbelievable views up there, as well as the new digital media labs that Ms. Frost was talking about. So, just unbelievable, places for kids, right? And so as Mr. Scaldi said, for parents and teachers and kids to be proud of their school, a lot of that has to do with the way their facilities look and feel. So we're excited about that. And what I'm really excited about, though it's a lot of work, we have a long way to go, just kicking off the gears, and that's Measure C, because we want to ensure that our elementaries, middle schools, and our comprehensive high school have those same, facilities and features that our new our new high schools have. So there's a lot of work that's, as the board knows, we've kind of just started that. We have Measure D study sessions on a monthly basis with the school board to kind of talk about where we're headed, what's going on. And so those will continue next week. And so we'll continue to share that information and kind of bring our best thoughts forward. We're at the point now where we're looking at all the school sites, prioritizing projects. And so we'll be bringing that to board to get your feedback on kind of next steps and where you'd like to see direction. We are jumping in front of fencing at our school sites. So Mr. Bonnet and myself walked every single school to look at security fencing. For elementary schools, we're pretty good. We're almost set with those, but our middle schools had a lot of needs. And so our hope is that by the spring and summer of this year right now, coming up, that we'll be able to get a contractor on board to get that fencing in. So as soon as possible, right, for those safety features. And again, looked at every single school, including Bellevue, Santa Fe. And then we're also putting together on the next to that is kind of a fields list. So going through how are we going to modernize fields? It's a big, for the community, teams, those types of things is a big thing for us to do. And that's, aside from every single school site and TKK classrooms and all the, everything else that we're going into. But if we can jump on a few things, let the public see that, that their money's being spent wisely, I think is very important.
Great. Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Mrs. Roger.
Mr. Pinkerton, on the fencing, if we're going to be starting to move on the fencing in the spring and summer,
Mhm.
will that then be not stopgap fencing, but the permanent fencing? And if so, do we have a standard specification and what would that look like?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both, I would say. So, for the most part, a lot of it is just your normal 6-foot chain link fence around, the back of campuses, the back of Los Ranchos, all around Laguna Middle School, Los Osos Middle School, right? The fronts of our school sites, we try to use decorative fencing, much that you'll see like at CL Smith or at Bishop's Peak or Sinsheimer, those types of things. Now, at this school in particular, Del Mar, we just to get some fencing in for now, temporary. We have done a few locations like that where we just put some chain link up just to get it set. Because in order to do the long-term decorative fencing, we have to do some DSA, which is Department of State Architects, adjustments to ADA and sidewalks and other things. So that's going to have to go to DSA. It's going to have to be approved 6 months down the road, those types of things. So, for the most part, most of what we looked at, we can pretty much do, just chain link, those types of things. But that decorative piece is a little different at a few spots. And as we go into school sites and we do major modernizations, let's say like at Laguna or at Los Osos Middle School, we're going to have to, where's the office going to go? Like they have decorative fencing now, but it needs to be changed out, painted, new. So there'll be things like that we'll need to change.
Would you say that a member of the public who was interested in what the fencing might look like could go to Smith or Bishop's Peak or Morbe High School and take a look at the black decorative fencing that that fronts those campuses and reasonably expect that what's coming for the balance of our schools will be something like that, or similar to that?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Buckman, then Mr. Unger.
I think Chris was first.
Yeah, Ryan, I have a question. Considering decorative fencing and the fencing you've talked about, what are we going to do to make sure that the community has access to our fields? And, when we think about the fencing and the needs for security around our classrooms, that's one thing. But then I know in Los Osos, having field access is really important to the community. So what are we doing about that?
So what we do at all of our sites that are fully fenced is basically we, when school starts in the morning, students are on campus, teachers on campus, we lock all the gates. Literally, a custodian goes around to all the perimeter fences and locks all the gates. And then 10 minutes before school's out, kids are going to leave. They go around, they unlock all the gates all the way around. So, let's face it, our schools are parks. They're places where kids use, youth groups, teams. So, and we open those facilities. Now, there are times when weekend, something get locked, something happens and we hear about it, we'll talk to the custodians and make sure that they're open, but, you know, it's a positive thing, I would say that we'll, you know, they're locked during the school day, but not outside of that. So nights, weekends, those types of things are still community use types of facilities. Unless we have a sports team, unless we have something going on, right, with the facility. We've had to tell some people at San Luis Obispo High School that they couldn't use the track until our teams are done, right? So, you know, there's some times where there's a little bit of conflict with that. And we just have to explain, hey, while the kids are using the facility, it's school use first.
And if I can, one of the things that you taught me, and one of the things I think that Marilyn may be getting at is it's not quite as simple as just putting a fence around
No,
a school.
yeah.
Because, tell me if I got this right. Kids, we need to stop people from coming in, but kids also need to be able to get out if they have to. Okay, and
Yes.
so
some doors have lock bars, push bars where they can get out, right? You know, at times where we have to lock the gates throughout the back of the school, teachers have a key, right? So we ensure that all staff has a key to be able to open those gates if there was a reason for them to flee the campus. I mean, that's all part of our safety planning and things that we go into. But there's a lot, you know, there's that balance that we get into, and we've talked a lot about this with Resolute, with our partners, our staff, safety, our parents, about, you know, locking in the campus, right? Versus, well, then how do people get out if there's an emergency, those types of things. So, you know, there's just all kinds of things that go into that conversation, but we definitely have, that's one of the things that we can jump on quickly, right? One of the projects we can get accomplished pretty fast. So I'm excited about that.
This is Roger.
Yeah, Mr. Buckman actually asked the question. I was just gonna ask you to explain how, in the event of an emergency, we can get students and staff out through those locked
Yeah.
gates. So you did explain that. I think piggybacking on, you know, what Mr. Buckman said about there's a lot involved with the fencing. I don't know that the public really understands that. We have to meet adults, Americans with Disabilities Act requirements, so we have to do ramping.
Slopes, all slopes throughout. Yep.
Approval.
Lots have changed since 1960 and other times when these schools were built. So a lot of that has to be updated.
So it's just not.
Yeah.
I do at their home.
Yeah, Pacheco would be a classic example of that. On the northern side of Pacheco, major hill slopes, huge steps, none of that is accessible at this point. So we'll be completely redoing that. And so we're not going to put a permanent fence in until we do that, right? Until we do all of that work and go through it. So yeah, we have a couple panels now. We have doors to the outside that we ask teachers to lock. But it's, you know, eventually there'll be fences outside of those doors, right? So kind of like Del Mar Elementary School. Right now, we have 2 classroom doors that go out to the open, right? Well, eventually, when we put the new fencing in, the decorative fencing, we'll ensure that ADA accessibility is there to those back doors. And that fencing will be outside of the doors, right? So the teachers don't have to worry about somebody coming into their door or keeping it locked all the time or those types of things.
Thank you.
Dr. Prater.
Yeah, I concur with everything. The part that I think Mr. Pinkerton understated is we have an architect working with our safety plan and also our fields, existing fields and access points. So this is a very thought out team effort that you guys are gonna weigh in on. You're gonna actually see the design. This is not something that a group of weekend warriors come out and put up a fence. This has many design functions. We were talking about Los Ranchos the other day where the TK class right now, because of the way the fencing is, the little kiddos have to go all the way around the school building just to get to their lunch or their snack. And it's a real problem. And so when the architect puts together the design, they're also talking to Ryan and the team on the safety plan. and how the students move around and how groups of people can get out when they need to, right? From the inside out. So there's a whole lot that goes with it. And then in terms of access to fields, we know sports teams are really excited about getting onto our newly refurbished fields when they're done. And we have to make sure that they have access in the proper ways. And so those are all those things. These are the things that we need to spend the next several months thinking through so that we can get those designs in front of you. We want our community to be proud of our schools, the way they look, but also how it has to serve a function. And I think we'll get there. There's so much we can do that's better than what we currently have. And that's what I wanted to add to this.
Ms. Dober-Drew.
And so along with the fencing, it creates a single point of entry also onto the campus, right? I went through that whole transformation in the school where I worked before I retired as a teacher. And so I'm fully, I'm just really behind this because it was totally open with kids running around on the top rooftops and everything all the time. And you didn't feel safe as a teacher working there if you had to come in on the weekend and you're the only one on campus or one of the few. And so now I think it's just going to add such a great measure of safety. Our areas are maybe a little safer than the area that I worked in down there at the other district, but still, I mean, it's a transformation and it really feels secure. So I'm glad we're doing it.
Anything else? All right. We are now jumping to item 9.03, summer experience update number 1. Welcome, Mr. Martin.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. So my goal tonight is to be able to give you an overview of the progress that we've been making in 2 important district initiatives. Okay, one of those is summer experience, and the other is family guides. So we're going to start off with our summer experience presentation, and I'm joined tonight by Jessica Jurek, a teacher in our district who's been an important part of helping these 2 initiatives come together. So Jessica, would you like to say hello to the group?
Hi, thank you for having me virtually. My name is Jessica. I was a classroom teacher in our district for about 10 years, and I've been on leave the last couple of years. And I've had a lot of fun being on Jeff's team and bringing this opportunity to the students in our district. So thanks for having me tonight.
Thank you for being here. Right, we are
Let's go full screen.
getting, Jessica, we're getting our technology squared away here. Bear with
No
us.
problem.
Your presentations. You can right here. Yeah, just see it.
All right, only 20 clicks. We're on. All right, so last time we spoke was back in, I think, September, when we did the update for last year's summer experience. So we've been working hard and we're excited about where we're at. And I thought it would be important, though, to kind of take a step back and kind of go big picture. We have some new members here with us tonight, and just to be able to explain what summer experience is and what it isn't might be helpful. So an important thing to understand is that summer experience is kind of a re-envisioning of a traditional summer school program. And this started a few years back, assembling a team and trying to reimagine what it can look like. Okay. And so the traditional summer school really is like a half-day program, ran typically about 4 weeks, right? And it was really focused on just the intervention piece, just the academics. Summer experience is different. Okay. And it's been going on a couple of years. Last year, we really kind of blew it wide open and really tried to do some really creative and innovative things. So just as a reminder, summer experience is not only the core academics, it's also that enrichment piece where we really try to give students the relevant kind of hands-on learning experiences. And it's open to all students. And really important is that it's free of charge. not only to take the classes, but the transportation, the meals. And then this year, we've kind of folding in childcare into that as well for our elementary age students, which is exciting. A big shift this year is that it is a 6-week program. Last week was 6 weeks as well, but we gave the option to families and to students to kind of do 3 weeks or a partial day. This year, because of some new funding requirements, we are doing a full 6-week program, full day. Summer experience is also something we do have community partnerships built in where they are offering some great classes, and it's a chance for younger students to access our high school campuses. So that's how summer experience looks a little different than a traditional summer school. Here are some details about it. If you'd like to see a little bit about the schedule, how it runs, the locations, for you having this presentation in front of you, the graphic there on the right is the brochure that we sent out to all families that included this information. We sent that out a couple of weeks ago. That is a link for you. If you'd like to click on that, it'll take you to the brochure in its entirety. So just some fast facts on summer experience. Again, it is open to all of our current district students, kindergarten through high school. Again, a full day 6-week program. And this year, like I said, they must commit to the full 6 weeks. And we are having our locations this year. Our locations are the Monarch Grove Elementary on the coast, Sinsheimer and Hawthorne in the city, and then Morro Bay High School and San Luis High School. Okay. So it was an impact summer experience is an impact on your site, right? So we're trying to kind of alleviate the impact of having it at one site year after year and trying to shift that, you know, ongoing maintenance and custodial to be able to kind of spread that that out a little bit between sites is kind of the smart move. But there are a couple repeat sites on here. So we're going to try to see what we can do next year to kind of shift that. So some big picture here, kind of what has been done, where are we now in our planning, and then where are we going? I'm not going to read through all of these, but I think it's important to kind of understand what the fall was spent on, right? You think, what I'm planning for something almost 9 months in advance. What does that look like? And it was important because when I was back with you in September, we went over all those metrics. What went well? We gathered a lot of feedback from our stakeholders, and we really were intentional this last fall about taking that feedback and trying to incorporate it into this year's plan. So coming up with the design, how's it going to look different? Where's our funding coming from? Working within the budget. Like all of these things were really a part of our planning in the fall. So again, identifying those program logistics, the schedule, which facilities are we going to operate out of? Who are we going to partner with in the community to be able to provide some of the staffing and lessons around these classes that we're offering? And then communicating, right, with our stakeholders. How are we going to get that message out about what the program looks like? And that's led us to kind of where we are now. February, March, this is really when things start to ramp up. We are actually signing students up as we speak for summer experience. You think it's pretty early, and it is, but that's on purpose. It's by design because we want to be able to get this opportunity out early for our families, so they know that, you know, that it can be available. And when we know what our need is and who is what they've requested, then we can staff a little bit more strategically, right? Based on what those interests are. So this month, really hitting the enrollment piece and then moving into recruiting staff this month, starting to hire next month into April.
And if I can jump in for just a minute, Jeff, as we were thinking about this year, trying to be really intentional to incorporate that feedback that we got from families last year, one of the things that they said was the sign-up process. They really wanted to be informed. They wanted communication. They wanted an easier process. And so far, the feedback we've gotten this year about we're using Google Forms this year to have families request courses. They've been really pleased. So I'm excited that one of the things that felt like a barrier last year, kind of the clunky enrollment system, it's easier for families to access.
Good point. We actually just hosted an evening last night where we actually helped families get signed up for anybody who had any technical issues and they wanted to join us. We actually signed families up last night at our meeting.
Mr. Martin, I wonder if you could explain a little bit about higher high school student aides.
Yeah, absolutely. So last year we did hire high school students to work in summer experience. It was great. We actually made the process very formal so that they could get the experience
The
themselves.
interview experience?
The interview, right, the application process, the interviewing, that whole thing, we tried to make that kind of formal for them so that they could actually get some practice going through that. And then we actually selected students that we hired, paid the money to come and work in our program over the summer. It was great. It's like a real win-win for us.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
And so there has been a lot of discussion about how can we revamp and kind of rethink our high school program. And we'll get to that in a minute, but we're kind of in the throes of that right now and communicating that message out in terms of how our high school credit-based program is going to look a little different this year. And then we're just continuing to develop course curriculum and course pathways for the summer, just solidifying, those units and those lessons. So that leads us into where we're going, right? We're going to continue to hire the next couple of months. We're going to hire student aides, finalizing curriculum, really getting our ordering down, trying to meet those deadlines. That's a big task. You can imagine over 2,500 students, several classes different classes that were ordering supplies and then staging those, readying them for distribution, and then coordinating with our community partners, just to make sure that we have all those plans in place, childcare, those services that we're offering. I'm not going to go through this, but I did want to include this slide because it basically is a lot of what I just discussed in the prior slide, but it's a different look at it, right? Kind of color coded. Jessica, do you want to add any insights into this slide that you really helped me create?
Well, I think like you said, Jeff, it's the same information as the previous slide, but it's helpful to see how things build on top of each other. And it does seem really early to have people submit course requests, but it really was a thoughtful and kind of a complicated process. We have to know what the demand is before we can hire staff and figure out how many classes we're going to offer. So even though it feels early, there's still a lot of work to do before this summer.
How many people have signed up so far? How many kids enrollments do we have so far? Do you know, Jeff?
I don't know. We're kind of handling enrollment in two phases. And so we have an early group that we've invited based on the funding requirements. And I did check yesterday and we have about, I'd say 400. That might be a little high.
Already.
Might be a little high.
Yeah, that's great.
300, 400.
Thank you.
So what are some of the exciting shifts this year? What's different this year that we can look forward to in 2023 compared to 2022? At our elementary level, again, going back to the feedback, we heard from staff that some of our classes, and we heard from our families and students as well, that some of the classes were long, right? We have 305-minute blocks in a summer experience day. That's an hour and 45 minutes. That can be a long time if you're a teacher of first graders in sports, for example, right? So there were some classes that it was, this was a long time to have for one group of kids doing one thing. And in other classes, you can imagine culinary arts, ceramics, those kind of lab-based classes, you need that time to set up and to, organize and to clean up. So we really were thoughtful about how can we maximize that time and make it look and make it really meaningful for kids. And so we kind of have a 2-for-1 option where we've consolidated some of our classes, allowing students more experience in different subjects. So we were really thoughtful around that. So some classes are 105 minutes, like culinary arts, for 3 weeks. And then those same students, after 3 weeks, will move into fine arts, drawing and painting. Other classes, we've taken that 105 minutes, and instead of splitting it 3 weeks and 3 weeks, we've split it like basically 50 minutes per day, right? So 50 minutes, a group will go to leadership, and then the next 50 minutes, they'll go to sports. So we were really thoughtful about the use of time in those classes. Another exciting shift, like I mentioned, free childcare, not only for our participating elementary students before and after school, but we wanted something for our TK families, and we're offering that full day TK childcare experience through our partner agencies. At the middle school, different course pathways, allowing returning students to have like new learning experiences. We're very thoughtful about how we could design this program so that we had pathways of study, like an arts pathway, a STEAM pathway, a skills pathway that the kids can go through. So their experience isn't just, oh, I took that last year. It's the same thing. So trying to make it dynamic from one year to the next. And then at our high school level, some pretty
Jeff,
big
can I ask you-
shifts.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So Jeff, do you see the course pathways that you're talking about for middle school students, 5th to 8th grade, sort of working in partnership with the CTE pathways we already have at the high school?
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. Yeah, I've been in conversation with Christine. Absolutely. And we're actually partnering with some of the same groups. Little side note, I was like giving Leslie a hard time the other day, say, hey, what's going on? You're partnering with the Slow Bike Coalition here. That's my group, right? I'm working with Rick down there as president, and he moved in, and they have that, and that's exciting. I was just giving him a hard time, but they're actually trying to develop an opportunity for kids to be working on bicycles and learning on how to, using tools, that kind of a thing. So yes, short answer. Our high school program. So we are really prioritizing a return to kind of a pre-pandemic in-person instruction. So this was something that we were given a lot of thought to, thinking about the quality of the learning experience for students. Right? We really shifted heavily to that online platform for good reason during the pandemic. But now we're looking to say, how can we build back in that in-person experience for students? So that's our commitment. We're really going to try to make that happen with our staffing this spring. And really that's about connecting students with the teacher in person for that personal connection and that quality learning experience in our course of study. Not an Apex online course of study that we really don't have as much control over, but really our own course of studies. And then having a few different course offerings for students to advance their course of study or to recover credits. So a little bit different look. We looked at our data from last year, which were those most popular courses. And we really tried to make sure that we were going to offer those this coming year. And really solidifying our partnership with local community colleges so that if students want to take that online option, that they still have an avenue to do so. And that would be through Cuesta or Allen Hancock College. Jessica, would you like to talk about our pathways a little bit?
Absolutely. So as Jeff talked about in the last slide, we were really intentional thinking about how can we make summer experience feel like the regular school year, in the sense that what students do in one grade really builds for the next grade, and it's all connected, it's all coherent. So trying to imagine, what would a student who attended summer experience last year, and then again this year, and then next year, how could their experiences build on each other so that it's complementary, but they're digging deeper each year and they have opportunities to explore new things. So you can see the 4 strands: academics, arts, skills, and STEM. You can see that some of the classes are offered across grade levels, both at our elementary school sites and our high school sites. And then some are offered just to our 5th through 8th graders. But just like in the regular school year, students take math every year of their academic career, but what they do each year is different. And that would be the same for summer experience. So a student who really found a love of performing arts as a 3rd grader last year or 4th grader last year could sign up for it again this year as a 5th grader and experience something different. And then you can also see all of the classes that we plan to offer as credit recovery and original credit for high school.
Some different offerings there, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What is on the last slide, what were the arts and STEM for the younger grades, if you wouldn't mind taking that is it, sorry. So I see the academics for the grades 1 to 4, and I see the headings: fine and culinary arts, leader in sports science, but I don't see the offering. Are those offerings or headings there?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking. I'd be happy to clarify that. Those are the names of the classes. So a student who wanted to explore STEM no matter what grade they were in, they could sign up for the science, coding, and engineering class. That would be the name of the course they would request. If they were a 5th through 8th grader and they were still interested in STEM, they could sign up for the entrepreneurship class.
Great.
And there's course descriptions that actually go in and describe the classes and how they're different at the different grade levels. This is just kind of that overview.
I have a question about the entrepreneurship. Is there a financial component to that?
There is, yeah.
'Cause
I'm
I
excited
remember we've
about
been
that.
talking about that for a
Mhm.
while.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I'm actually co-developing that with somebody that we're contracting with to kind of develop some of that curriculum that we started at Sinsheimer back in the day with our after-school enrichment program.
Good. Would this be able to be continued through the year so that they could build those financial habits over time?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? I think that's financial literacy is important. And maybe something
It's crucial.
we
My
don't do
son is
enough of.
36 and he's just now learning that. Please. I mean, he's very skilled. He's an engineer, but
Yeah.
still finances is.
One thing we're trying to do is make their, without getting into too much detail, the science, coding, and engineering, we're picking modules for students to experience at the elementary level that will kind of give them a touch into some of these opportunities that they might be able to experience later, like entrepreneurship. So remember our I Innovate kits during the pandemic? They did some business entrepreneurship, and we're going to have some of those kind of like iterations of that done in the summer with our earlier grades students.
Okay, great. It's crucial that they understand it. It ain't just about balancing the checkbook. In fact, that's very little of what it all is all about. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
So Jeff, I'm just going to jump in because we sort of interrupted you at this point. Maybe this is just a good time to keep going. As we look at this is a sort of a different approach to learning or teaching, either way you want to look at it. So are we somehow able to track and compare? So I'll just pick my worst subject, math. This is some fun ways to learn math. And then there's the way I learned math, which wasn't so much fun. And I didn't do well. So can we see the difference? Are we looking at this because the possibility of this being a great way to break? You got it.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we really focus on, and I speak to over and over again with my team and others, is about what application are we embedding in summer experience? What's the application? How are they taking what they're learning as far as those essential skills that are super important to know? And how are we giving them an opportunity to implement those in the summer? And so that even in math, right? English language arts, we're providing kids with a segment of their block of time to do that. And so we're measuring the engagement level through that end of summer survey, where we survey our kids, and that's one of the questions, because that's important to us. We want to know, how is this learning experience? Were you engaged? Was it exciting for you?
But also, Mr. Mayfield does such a good job giving us the data on how kids are doing in math, how kids are in. Is there a way to somehow compare? Are we doing assessments at all during the summer?
And I appreciate you, Mark, because you know what? You just segue perfectly.
Okay, there you go.
Into the link at the bottom. Look at the bottom right. You see the September board presentation, the link. So one of the things we discussed was that comparative analysis, right? We took those students who participated in summer experience, and we compared them to the non-participant group. And we saw an increased level of achievement in their scores at the end of the year in May, and then compared to the beginning of the year in August, September, right? So we did that comparison. So it's there for you if you want to indulge in the data. Along with the summer experience video too, you can access to just kind of get a glimpse of what it was like, the program was like last year. Any questions?
I just wanted to state that a couple notes I made watching this, that I appreciate that students, that both for our wear and tear on our sites as well as staff, but that students are moving to different sites. I think it makes it just, especially for students who will be doing this year after year, as a little bit of additional interest and opportunity for them to become familiar with the district as a whole.
Yep.
I know last year, San Luis High kids were not able to be at San Luis High because of construction. Is that right? They weren't there for the whole,
We know.
weren't they at
Yeah,
some
they were
different
there.
places?
We did a shift. We had a
Yeah.
high school program at San Luis High, our 9th through 12th graders, as well as our 5th through 8th graders
Right.
operating simultaneously. We had to shift
Yeah,
within the campus
so
for
I-
maintenance and custodial cleaning,
Right.
but
So I think this, I appreciate that we do that. And I also really want to make sure that we continue to appreciate and thank our partner agencies, especially to help provide the free childcare. That is a huge lift for our families and for us I'm just so appreciative of that. And also the continued collaboration with the foundation. And that I am really interested in that measuring the growth of our students is that the ones who attend the summer school program, the summer experience program. So I think this is great. We're on our way. This is only our second year of doing this. And it's really creating, as we fine tune it and figure out what kids need and what we can offer more of and how we can continue to collaborate with the community at large, as well as meet the needs of more and more, not just the needs, but the interests of more and more of our students who aren't able to have that experienced in the regular school year because the limitations on electives and their schedules and just what we're able to offer. So, Mr. Blackburn.
Yep, thank you. Ellen just sparked a thought for me. As part of looking at the assessment and the comparison on, it's interesting to me that if we're going to see this improvement, continued improvement, that it's also, we're using the summer, students are in school a longer school year is basically what it comes down to. And so some evidence that might be a good use of time.
right, the extended school year, right? And usually we would expect to see that summer slide and, last year in many respects, we did not see that. We saw a continued achievement.
Mr. Banfield.
What exactly do the fine and culinary arts look like in the performing arts? Can you give me an idea of what that might look like?
From a student's experience standpoint, students will come in the culinary arts, for example, and we ran classes under the direction of Erin Primer too, as we know how amazing Erin is. She really helped put together this curriculum focusing on nutrition, a really balanced understanding of nutrition. Students get to come in and actually prepare meals under the direction of their teacher. And it was one of our most popular classes. Fine arts, for many of our classes, we contracted with Children's Creative Project to hire artists and residents to come in, experts in their field, many of them amazing, working with kids and have experience working during the regular school year with our students to provide that instruction in fine art and drawing and painting. Performing arts, we kind of a collection of different teachers that we hired on our own or contracted with Children's Creative Project. Again, just like theater, performing arts, and you can imagine how that would look different at an elementary school, maybe middle school and high school. I'm excited, not our high school students last year per se, but at the high school in the theater, right? We were having our 5th through 8th graders. I'm excited this summer because we have a 6-week program. Last year, we were kind of disrupted by kids who were coming in and out at that 3-week break. But now with the 6-week program, I mean, the goal will be to really have that culminating showcase performance at each of our sites. In addition to the skills that they learn.
Thank you.
Well, how will you keep the attrition from happening over the course of a 6-week period?
The students,
Yeah, the dropout. I know it's going to be an exciting program. They won't want to drop out, but
yeah, that's the goal, right?
then plans,
Yep.
family plans change and
Yeah.
things like that.
I'll be honest with you, a couple things, right? We really were thoughtful about this and we are instituting an attendance policy, this summer. Last year, we were really light on that. We really didn't have a firm attendance policy due to COVID and other things. And but this year we do, and we're asking families to please honor that. If they have plans for extended vacations, please do not sign up and take a spot from somebody who can attend every day. So we're asking families to make that commitment. So that is one piece. However, having said that, the reality is it's free. And there's really nothing that would stop somebody if they just didn't want to attend one day, right? They would just do that. So that is one of our challenges. Sometimes when there's not that skin in the game and there's not that buy-in, there's not that impetus to really show up every day, right? When we all pay for something, we feel like that obligation, we have to get our money's worth. So that is a bit of one of our challenges.
I wonder if you could have like a waiting list or a group that could come in and take the place of those.
Yeah, we've thought about that. That logistically, it's a bit challenging.
It would be because they'd miss
Yeah.
the beginning.
Yeah. So we want to keep that continuity for teachers as well,
Yes.
without having the high
Oh.
mobility of a classroom in and out. So, but there might be a balance, right? In terms of a certain timeline when we can have a waiting list, and we'll explore that with my team.
Mrs. Roger, thank you for your patience.
Thank you. I'm not sure exactly how to articulate this, so bear with me, but Mr. Martin and also Mr. Mayfield, when Mr. Mayfield brings to us the student achievement data, it seems to me that I am often seeing a drop in achievement in mathematics, and it seems to occur after fourth grade into fifth grade. So that I've thought there are some key concepts that are being missed here or are not being reinforced. Somehow kids are losing something at that point, and then it's the beginning of, for some, a decline in mathematics. So I wonder, has there been any thought given to, hey, this is happening here, and we'd like to really hit this, hit these concepts in summer experience?
Yeah, there actually has. Yeah. Working with Chelsea Smiley, she's really been helpful. She's one of our TOSAs at ISLA, and she's really knowledgeable about curriculum. And we've actually done just that. What's the latest research say about kids' struggles in math? It often revolves around number sense and fractions specifically.
Okay,
So we've geared our curriculum this summer for that.
that's terrific. Thank you.
Anyone else? Right, Mr. Martin, I know that you're presenting the next topic as well, but do you mind if we take a quick?
Not at
break?
all. Not at
right.
all.
I am showing that it is 7:57. If we could be back here by 8:05. Oh, Mrs. Dawson. Oh, is there any public comment on summer experience? This is just an information item. Okay, thank you. All right.
Thank you.
See everybody back at 8:05.
We are now.
Our next item is 9.04, the Family Guide Update. Mr. Martin, you are still on.
All right, thank you. So family guides, I want to bring you up to speed on something. I'm excited about this work. This is started really with a conversation for me personally with Dr. Prater several years ago about the importance of being able to bring into view what are the essential standards that we have in our district at each subject, at each grade level. And then most recently, kind of, how can we share those with families so that they have clarity around that, right? And so really what I want to talk to you about tonight is how we've come to, when I say we, me and my small team have come to kind of plan family guides. And I'll give you kind of an overview. What are they? Why are they important? And how are they coming to be developed? Okay. So I've wanted to put this visual up here because I think it's important when we think about family guides. Family guides it's a tool, it's a resource, it's a document that's really aimed at engaging families more, allowing them to engage more deeply with their child's education, right? To build partnerships with their teachers and develop a strong bond between the students, the families, and teachers. That's what's necessary. We know that in our schools, teachers are working very hard, right, to make sure that the students know that essential content. Students are also working very hard to be successful. We need to make sure that our families, that we're partnering with the families so that they have the information they need to help support that process, right? And so think about that stool analogy, right? You need all three legs of that stool in order for that academic success to be realized, right? So these family guides are how do we inform our families and how do we then, to empower them to then partner with our teachers to make sure that their own students are learning at a high level, okay? So think of that stool as we talk about this tonight. So what are they? What are the specifics of a family guide? Family guides are not new. I'll just say that up front. It's something that have been instituted around our country for a number of years. And they can really take different forms depending on, the district or the state that are using them. In our family guides, they are essential learning standards at each grade level in each of the 4 core subject areas. Okay, super important. Like it's the most important concepts, skills, and knowledge that kids really need to know at that grade level, kind of distilled in each of the grade levels. Like what are the essentials, right? Not everything A to Z, but what are those most important things? And I gave you some examples there of language arts. They also include talking points. So it's not enough to just know for families to know what their children are learning, but how do they engage? Like, what do they do, right? As a family, how do they engage their children in conversation around that learning? And so we've included talking points for families, for parents, caregivers, questions that they can ask their children, topics that they can discuss with their child's teacher at parent conferences or, when they're inquiring. So really important point there. The other thing that we've included are reinforcing activities. Question.
And the essential learning standards that we're talking about correlate with the standards-based report cards. Is that correct?
They do. Yep. At our elementary level, which correlate with Common Core standards. Yep. Good question. Thank you. And then last thing that they encompass are reinforcing activities. So what are the things that they can do with their children to reinforce that learning? So when you think about, whether it's on a drive and you're with your primary age child, a kindergarten child, I see green cars. What else do you see that's green? Simple things like that. Having conversation starters, right, with their kids. How can they reinforce the learning around those essential concepts? And what are some of those activities? And Jessica, again, I hope you're still with us. So please jump in too. Feel free as I'm speaking through these slides. Jessica has been instrumental, especially with just she's a teacher in our district who has some time to dedicate to this. And she's been fantastic at being able to assemble some of this information that you'll see in a minute through Canva and in formatting this information for us. Not to mention the fact just putting her teacher eyes on it for me has been really, really important. So why are family guides important? So we know that parents and caregivers, they really want their children to succeed in school. Sometimes it's difficult. Multiple students, a lot of information that schools share with families. It hasn't always been easy for parents and caregivers to really figure out what their own children should know and be able to do at each grade level. Okay. And then on top of that, how to discuss these things with their students, or what activities that they can do to reinforce the teacher's efforts, right? That their students are learning it. So we're developing family guides to help out. Okay. Important to note, family guides are being developed. You know, I started out with a draft of the family guides and assembled some of this information, like Chris referenced, Mr. Unger referenced, right? Like as far as from the report card and some of the work that's already been done, and develop some drafts as a starting point for our teachers, because a lot of the work was already done. It was out there. It just needed to be formatted and assembled. Okay. And developing these, but we're giving them to teachers, select teachers around our district to give input on this, put their eyes on it and offer input and really be a part of the development process. Okay. So again, think English, math, science, social studies, core concepts at each grade level. So how are the family guides being created? And maybe I'll just turn it over to you, Jessica, because this is a similar timeline view. And I know I spoke a little bit about developing the drafts, but maybe you can elaborate on that and then speak into kind of where we're at in the process.
Absolutely. So as Jeff was saying, a lot of the information, the content for these guides already existed in the world. A lot of it within our very own school district. When we made the shift to Common Core, a lot of these essential learning standards were already identified and developed. Looking at our curriculum, looking at the standards, work from school district teachers. So it's looking at the work that's been done. It's looking at the curriculum, at the report cards, looking at what's already out there, what other states have developed. And so it's gathering a lot of these resources. And as Jeff was mentioning, now we have actual experts, grade level experts, teachers in the classroom looking at these, reviewing the content that's there, providing activities that really do match what's happening in the classrooms, because that's how these guides are going to be most useful. If what we're encouraging families to do really do complement and reinforce what's happening in the classrooms. So that's the work that's happening right now is teachers are looking at it, they're giving their feedback, and then I'm doing a lot of copy pasting, taking all their good ideas and just putting it into a template that's consistent across grade levels, because that's one of the goals is to make this a guide that families can expect at the beginning of every year. And they know how to see the information, they know how to use it as a tool. As we're getting this feedback, it's then going to be shared with parent groups, shared with other teachers. It's an ongoing process of incorporating feedback. These are living documents, and as we expose them to more stakeholders that have different sets of eyes, teachers' eyes and parents' eyes, then we can refine it as the year goes on. We're also going to make sure that it's translated so that no matter what a family speaks, they'll be able to access this information, because we know all of our families want their students to succeed, and have them ready to share for next school year.
Great. Thank you, Jessica. So in order to streamline the process a bit, we really developed these drafts, right? Like I said, with a lot of the information that was out there, whether it was the secondary schools and their adoption of new curriculum, developing their scope and sequence of instruction, some of this work has been done, right? So I assembled that with Jessica's help, put it into this nifty little program and made it nice and easy to read, right? So that was part of that developing the drafts, shared it out with school sites who then took it to their leadership teams, on site and got their feedback. And then we took that feedback, made some revisions, shared it back out with teachers at each grade level to take a look at. And that process is happening, kind of wrapping that up, but basically it's happening December, January, and into February a little bit. So we're wrapping that process up. Once we get that feedback, like Jessica said, we'll incorporate it along with our family feedback, because principals also took this out to different, whether it be school site council, PTA meetings, and got feedback from families. So we're incorporating that as well. So I kind of look at it like an accordion, right? We're going out to get feedback, bringing it back, tightening it up, revising a draft, sending it back out to sites, which we will be doing for site leadership teams to look at again before all teachers look at it, right? A little bit later, probably in March, early April, at a staff meeting where they give a chance to get feedback. Okay. Mr. Banfield.
So what we're saying is the teachers have been reviewing it, and parents have been looking at it through the forums of PTA and site council. Is that what we're
Right. So
saying?
school sites are sharing in different ways, right, with their parent groups. And one of the things I'd like to do too is be able to take this to like our LCAP advisory committee, as well as our DLAC committee. And so in different forums, right, giving families an opportunity to provide feedback on what's useful. And we've actually gotten some really interesting feedback already. And so one of the statements that Jessica made was these are living documents. I want people to understand that this is our first blush at these family guides, right? And then in successive years, we might shift these, right? This is not something that we just, put on the shelf and it's there, right? It really will be important. The tool itself is important, but how it's used, I would say, is more important, right? Then we'll get into maybe that. If I were to extend this timeline into July and August, we might even look at like what sort of training can we do with our site administrators to make sure, and our instructional leadership teams at our sites, in terms of how we can really leverage this tool to make it something that's useful for families and really reinforces that partnership.
Thank you. Thanks, Ellen. I think we're coming up on this, but just so I don't forget for myself, it looks like these are going to be produced as paper. And I know you'll translate them, but it looks like these are going to be paper, and just so many of our folks are 40% of the families are living in poverty. It means they're working really hard. They may not have time to read. They may not have the skills to read. Maybe this year or in the future, is there a plan to come up with another way to get this? And I'm going to say, get it in the hands of, but get it into the computers, get it into the iPhone, get it somehow so parents can have it, that it's not a piece of paper?
It'll be both.
It will.
We haven't spoke about that. My vision was that it's both, right? That paper I think that's important, especially the first year out, to have that.
Yeah.
And one of the things we haven't talked about is like mailing this home in early August, right? A week or two before school starts, so that families have that and they can see what they can expect this year. And then the teachers can then maybe provide more detail at the back to school night, right? Here, like one of the things that the family said, I'll give you an example, was it would be great if we had some examples of what a third grade writing or whatever grade, what you're looking for, what we call exemplars of the writing, so that the families could see, oh, this is what this is what on grade level work looks like for my family, for my child. That's great, but I don't know, the family guide is just that big picture view. What then that discussion might be with sites might be, how can we then support families' understanding through family guides to give them more of what they're looking for? So that might be that back to school night discussion around what they can get specifically to give more details.
So I'm also thinking, we've had some discussion tonight about what's going to be happening at the in terms of CTE classrooms, and the amount of money we've invested in we're calling fine arts, but film classes, studios, recordings. So,
yeah,
I mean, I visited both junior highs. I mean, or the middle schools, we have kids that are and programs that are fully capable, like my sense is we're fully capable right now to actually take this material and put it in an audio version or put it into a I'll say film, that's not a digital version.
Right.
And it just we involve our kids.
Like different medium, right? To attract.
Sorry, thank you. A different
that-
medium for
Yeah.
a different generation of parents.
That's a really good point.
So just a thought.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Make sure you take note of that for us.
Got it.
So I have a question about a possible format, because I did a lot of organizing of the program parents as partners in both English and Spanish for another school district. And it was an evening and there was a rotation between classrooms. So that's just another format of getting the parents comfortable with interacting with a broad spectrum of school personnel and feel like a family. It was a very successful program.
So those will all be part of our brainstorms about how we can really make this tool kind of come to life and help make it really practical for families, which is our goal. You know, we don't want this to be something that's just we check a box and it sits on the shelf. That's not the point of this. This really is a living document that hopefully is going to be practical and usable for families. So your points are well taken. Like, how do we maybe create this in different formats for families, and how do we support them, you know, in person to really understand what it is and how to use it?
Right. Many, of course, not being available during the day.
Yeah,
so
right.
they come at night. Possible.
Just on a side note on that, I met with our dual language immersion schools, Pacheco and Baywood, late last week, to talk about what sort of companion document might we want to include for their families, because their child's learning experience is a bit different, right, with those schools. The core is the same, and that's why we're looking at this standardized template with information, but there is a different element to their learning experience that should be included. And so we had that conversation. So we're in the midst of developing that as well. Ms. Jurek, would you like to take the group through just the sample, since you were able to kind of assemble the information and content in this format?
I'd be really excited to. So this is a draft of a 5th grade guide. This is kind of current thinking around it. So it's different than it looked a couple weeks ago, and it's going to be different than what families see next school year. But I think something to just keep in mind as we take a peek at it is that stool imagery. And as we look through the different pages, to be thinking about how this guide, the different parts of it, really helps support each leg of the stool, working together with that ultimate goal of student academic success. So if you can envision the guide like a booklet, if you could go back just one slide, Jeff. Thank you. This will be the cover, and the cover, aside from the heading with the grade, the content is the same K through 12. And in each of the academic areas, you'll notice that this isn't content. These are behaviors, these are practices, these are habits of mind. And it was really intentional that this is the same for the different grade levels, because these are how mathematicians behave. These are how readers think and behave. So wanting from the very beginning to communicate to parents that the work they're doing in kindergarten and 1st grade, even though it looks very different from 9th and 10th grade, we're building the same habits of mind across grade levels. Thank you, Jeff. So as you open the booklet, you can imagine that this will be the open booklet, and you can see along the sides, it looks a bit like dividers. On one side, it says language arts and literacy. The other side is math. In a moment, we'll turn the page again and you'll see science and engineering and social sciences history. As we look at these two pages, you can see that each page has the same type of information. And this is true across grade levels. We really wanted it to be consistent so families don't have to spend time figuring out what kind of information it is. They can dive straight in regardless of what grade their child is. So at the top of each page, there's performance outcomes. This is the essential learning that we want students at each grade level to focus on. And these were identified, like we said, a few years ago when we made the switch to Common Core. These are, based on report cards. These were things that teachers are now looking at and saying, yeah, this really is what we're focusing on in classrooms. These really are essential for students at this grade level. The other parts of these pages, I think, are really important as we think about that family leg of the stool. Everyday activities to support student learning. As a classroom teacher, I get so excited to see these because we ask families to do this. We send a message on Parent Square, we send it in our classroom newsletter, or we tell the kids to go home and do this with their families. But this actually puts it in parents' hands at the beginning of the year. These are activities that don't require prep, don't require special materials. Like Jeff was mentioning, I can do it in the car. I can do it when we're playing a game. I can do it around the dinner table. I can look for things when I'm out in the community with my child. I'm sort of envisioning this as something that goes on the fridge. Right? Like as I'm cooking dinner, I can take a peek and see if there's something that I can do with my child to just bring school back home. And when a kid can't tell you what they do at school, that these are conversation starters too with them. And that brings us to that first box, questions to ask your child. So these are questions they can use anytime throughout the school year. And then the second box, these are the topics that parents can bring to teachers. We know that families, they want to support their children, they want to have relationships with their educators, but they don't always have the language to ask, to how is my child doing? Well, this gives them some language to get more specific than that. So they can get the information that they really want, but maybe don't know how to ask about. So you'll see that for each content area, there's some topics that they can bring to their child's teacher.
And
We
just real
spoke-
quick, it's just content specific, right? So all of the things that you see on the literacy page in terms of activities, questions, topics to discuss, those are all specific to that subject.
Thank
We
you
have
for clarifying.
Ms. Dobler-Drew.
So I know we've been thinking a lot about, I believe it's McDowell, is that correct?
Yeah.
With the whole notion of, what are we learning? Why are we learning it? How will we know that we've learned it? How does this support that?
Well, I think it's a starting point, right? As far as what are we learning? This is the big piece up top, right? Here are the essentials that students should be learning in each grade level. So having that clarity, and that's a term that he uses quite a bit, is first that clarity of just understanding. And I think, parents, we want to take that mystery out of what their children are learning. I think where we need to go further is that communication between the teacher and the families to get into those additional questions. How do we know we're learning it, right? Those are the things that are more nuanced that we're not necessarily going to capture in detail in a family guide, but this provides hopefully the clarity for the families to understand what is it that my child's learning at that grade level in this subject.
Ms. Dobler-Drew.
I hope you'll take this as like a brainstorm and not like a challenge, but I mentioned the program that I was involved with. I taught during my time children with illiterate parents. So
Mhm.
even if you
Yep.
translated this, they wouldn't be able to use the
Complex.
Spanish version. So I'm wondering if you can think in terms of graphics and pictures, because I was always challenged to think of
Yeah.
ways they can support their child, because I feel like I can't support my child.
Mm.
Yes, you can. You have these pictures to show them and ask them, or you have these coded questions, very simple,
Mhm.
that you can ask. Things like that we have to be thinking of now if we're going to be
Yep.
thinking of equity for parents that are working in the fields and really aren't too literate.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Parent-friendly language is one of the areas of emphasis that I gave and I kind of tasked our teachers with. If you're providing feedback, please take this kind of education ease that that all the standards are written in, and really think about putting this in a language it's easy for anybody to understand. So just so you know, that's something that, although we're not necessarily there yet with all of what you see in front of you, these are drafts. That is something that we're taking into consideration.
Well, just one example for the children that are learning to read, those are the ones I always taught in second and sometimes third grade and first grade.
Mhm.
The parents, the books without words in them, so that the child can tell the story to the parent can ask about the pictures, and they have pictures. So wordless books are really good for that age.
We actually had conversations about that today.
Mhm.
Thank you,
Synchronous.
Mr. Banfield.
Mr. Banfield.
Just an observation, on the language arts,
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
under everyday activities. That first bullet, that would be a very interesting one, because
Closed captioning?
I have to use closed captioning on everything now. I go to the theater, I get a reader, but it's funny. I don't know how many people have done this, but when you listen to, let's say, a local news broadcast and it's being transcribed as they're saying it, and I'm looking at it and think, what? That isn't what they said. That might be that might be a really good activity,
That's
you know.
right.
Now, are they really saying this, and the kid will say, hey, there's something going on. Why did they write that? Anyway, just a thought.
Extra cookie for every mistake you find, you can tell me, right? Yeah. Yeah, closed captioning is a powerful one, especially if you're learning a foreign language too. Not only learning to read, but Spanish, etc.
Yeah, my son-in-law likes me to watch Pablo Escobar, El Patrón del Mal. And, under the best circumstances, I'd be able to pick it up. But I have to turn on the Spanish subtitles.
Yeah.
So I can, anyway, it is a good method.
It is. It's a good tool. So those are the types of things we're striving for, right? Things that parents may not think of that actually can be very powerful to support the learning that teachers and students are trying so hard to achieve. And so we're not going to go through this in detail, but as you can see, science, as well as history, social studies are also in the same format. And again, I think we still have some work to do with some of that parent-friendly language, but we wanted to just kind of show this to you so that you could see the format and what it can look like for families. Ms. Jurek, anything else on this?
Well, just to touch back on what you said earlier about the way that it's used is going to be so important. And I'm thinking about one of the questions from earlier, and what do we want to learn and how do we know that we've learned it? And I think this is going to be an important tool in teachers' arsenal and engaging parents, but it's certainly not the only one. I can imagine using this at parent conferences, in conversations with parents, along with samples of their work and grade level exemplars. So that brainstorming work that we hope to engage teachers in at the end of this year, gathering all their expertise is how do we use this in our ultimate goal of engaging parents and building student success will be really an important part of this process.
And so this is a work in progress. We're mid-year, we're continuing to gather feedback, incorporating that feedback and refining those drafts, sharing it back out to school sites and others to just get the feedback, continue to refine as we go forward. And then hopefully, by the end of this school year, we'll be, done with our first iteration and we'll go to print. And then it also be shared out electronically. So that's the goal.
Yeah, this is great. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address us on this, either in person or via Zoom? All right. One of the things that strikes me is how much one of the goals this year that we have is to increase communication. And if this doesn't do that, we in many ways in all sorts of communication in the written form, in our teachers and staff supporting it at the beginning of the year, back to school nights, and then seeing how we refine this. I think it's always interesting when we put something out for the first time to see how it evolves a little bit as we find a landing space for it that fits the best with and best serves our families and our students. So this is great. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next item is 9.05, approve board member pay for permissible absence. Dr. Prater.
Yes, I'm asking for the board to approve Mrs. Rogers' absence. She was quite ill during the two board meetings. One was a board meeting, and one was a study session, January 12th and 17th, and I'm seeking your approval so she can be properly compensated.
Anyone from the public wishing to address us on this? Okay,
So moved.
all right.
Sorry, Mark.
Yes. just
I'll
jump-
second, but I do have a quick.
Okay, motion by Mr. Unger, second by Mr. Buckman, and Mr. Buckman, you have a,
Yeah. I'm just gonna take this as an opportunity. I know some people think that we make a ton of money sitting up here for all the hours that we work and just, we're just like eating at the government trough. And I just want everybody to understand that this work that we do is because we love it, because we get $300 a month. And it barely covers our gas mileage. And I just want to thank Marilyn. She's been doing this a long time.
all right, we have a motion by Mr. Unger, a second by Mr. Buckman. Mr. Unger, Mr. Buckman,
Yes.
Ms. Delbert Drew, Mrs. Roger,
I'll abstain.
just make my life hard.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right, Mr. Banfield,
Yes.
and I am a yes. All right, the motion carries 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 yeses, 1 abstention. All right, of course. Next is hi.
Hi.
Mrs. Frost with a couple of board policy revision.
Yes, so I'll start with the first one. It's Board Policy 3551. That's food service operations and cafeteria funding. And this is a mandatory revision for us. A couple of changes to note: all kids who request a meal will receive a nutritionally adequate meal free of charge as long as universal funding is available. And that's something that we do provide across our district. We're also attempt to procure locally sourced products. And then finally, we really are to purchase within the United States unless a couple of things aren't met. Maybe the bid's too high, the quality's poor, or there's not available enough for our kids. I recommend this comes back for a second reading.
Anyone from the public wishing to address us on this? Right, any comments from the board? Everyone all right with this coming back for a second reading?
I just have one comment. I was at the County Board of Supervisors meeting today, and 3-2, they voted against allocating 25 acre feet of water to the small farmers. So it's going to be progressively harder to get local, good, diverse food because the big guys come in, and then it seems like the majority on the county board wants to cater to them now. So, and the grape growers and the big guys. So when you said local, I thought, hey, it might get less and less local now.
It might, but it's nice that our board policy points to that we're to attempt to do that if at all possible. Help
Right.
our local farmers.
Well, you guys are invited to speak out, speak your mind about this too, when it comes up again.
Mr. Unger.
Well, I would just point out that although the law changed, because basically this is a changing in law for
Mhm.
California that this is the way we must purchase items. We've been doing this because we believe that our local farm to table suppliers are the best source of food for our kids. And so this is something that our food services department has been working on for several years and been very successful at, as a matter of fact.
Agreed. Thank you.
Right.
Okay, I'll move on to the second board policy, which is board policy 3516.5. It's emergency schedules, and this will resonate with you. When an emergency condition causes a closure, thus decreasing our instructional day, this BP details paperwork necessary for us to move on to the CDE. And we all know that we experienced this in January with our heavy rains. It also requires us to create a long-term independent study plan for situations like this. And it details community notification of any such closure. I recommend that this comes back for a second read.
Anyone from the public, Ms. Dawson? All right. Any board discussion? Everyone all right with this coming back for a second reading? All right, thank you. All right, next is our action consent calendar. Please let me know if you would like anything pulled. 10.01, approval of certificated and classified personnel items. 10.02, acceptance of donations. 10.03, approval of furniture and equipment request. 10.04, approval of minutes from January 12, 2023. 10.05, approval to post E-rate Form 470 for equipment for internet access throughout the district, project number 036123C. 10.06, approval of purchase orders and CalCard purchases. 10.07, approval of school site safety plans.
Please pull.
10.08, school accountability report cards.
Please pull.
10.09, approval of warrants and payroll. 10.10, proposed revisions to board policy 200, goals for the school district, second reading. 10.11, proposed revisions to board policy 3452, student activity funds, second reading. 10.12, authorizing continued use of remote teleconferencing provisions pursuant to AB 361 and Government Code Section 54953.
I move approval of items 10.01 to 10.06 and 10.09 to 10.12.
I'll second.
Anyone from the public on these items? Thank you. Mr. Unger,
Yes.
Mrs. Roger,
Yes.
Mr. Banfield, Mr. Buckman,
Yes.
Ms. Delbert Drew. And I am a yes. 10.07, Mr. Buckman.
Thank you. Thank you very much for letting me pull this item. I think it's really, I just want to call attention to this. It doesn't sound all that exciting, approval of school site safety plans, but this is a ton of work's gone into this, a ton of the board's time, a ton of staff's time. It speaks, I'm sorry, we had a 6-year-old shoot a teacher in this country. And it just speaks volumes about where we need to be and how much safety we need. And a lot of effort's gone into our own school site safety plans. And so I just wanted to pull and make that clear, and everybody should take a look at these if they have the opportunity. So I move approval of 10.07.
I'll second that.
Anyone from the public? All right, Mr. Buckman,
Yes.
Mr. Unger,
Yes.
Mrs. Roger,
Yes.
Ms. Dobler Drew, Mr. Banfield,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. 10.08, Mr. Buckman.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to pull this school accountability report cards. We often hear that we never know what's going on in our schools. We have no idea what's going on. And one of the things that we have in the state of California that's, I think, pretty unique and pretty wonderful are these school accountability report cards. They've been around for probably about 25 years. If you have not looked at them, please do. There's a ton of information in these things about your local schools, and especially your neighborhood school. I move approval of 10.08.
Mr. Banfield, would you like to second this? I thought you would. All right, Mr. Buckman,
Yes.
Mr. Banfield.
Yeah.
Ms. Dobler Drew, Mrs. Roger,
Yeah.
Mr. Unger, and I'm a yes. Right, next, anything for the advanced agenda? Next, 12.01, reports by board members. Mr. Unger.
So it's been a busy week, as Garrison Keeler said, a busy week in Lake Wobegon, although we're not, certainly not Lake Wobegon. I was fortunate enough to be able to take a tour of both San Luis Obispo and Morro Bay High Schools to see what work has been done with Measure D so far. And I will tell you, it is very exciting, and I can hardly wait until we open up the new multi-purpose room at Morro Bay High School. Actually, that whole wing. There will be a food court there, and there will be a food court at San Luis Obispo High School as well. The work that's been done is just spectacular. There will be pizza ovens. There is a grill there. I mean, there should be no reason for the students at Morro Bay High School to walk across the street and waste their money at Taco Bell, frankly. Very exciting. Along with other board members, with Mr. Buckman and with Mr. Banfield. We took a boardwalk at Laguna. I was able to take a boardwalk at San Luis Obispo High School. Thank you to Mr. Richmond. I did a quick visit to Baywood for some other reasons, but I was able to go into the iInnovate lab, and a second grade class was working with virtual reality headsets. And they were looking at a boreal forest. It was really neat. And the students were so excited, and the teacher was on fire, and the person that was in charge of the iInnovate lab just was really doing a great job. It was very, very exciting to see what's coming our way, and in terms of technology and ways that we can implement technology to increase student achievement and student learning. And then again, along with Mrs. Sheffield and Mr. Buckman, we did attend a meeting with Assemblyperson Addis and State Senator John Laird. It was co-sponsored by CSBA. Dr. Prater was there. We had it at our San Luis Obispo High School Black Box Theater. I guess it's not a black box theater, our theater at our theater at San Luis Obispo High School. And thanks to you guys for doing that. It was a great opportunity for us to hear from the senator and our assembly person. So I wanted to thank them and thank the school for their efforts in bringing this together.
Mr. Buckman.
Thank you. And thanks for all the things that Chris and I were able to do together. I won't repeat those. Several of us were able to attend the San Luis CTA get together, Laguna Grill. It's been, I think, 3 years. And I just wanted to reach out, say thanks to everybody, but especially to Phil Angel, the president, for bringing that back. It was really important for me to be able to sit down with teachers and just talk. Probably the most fun thing I did was I attended Laguna Middle School's Snowball. I haven't been to a middle school dance. I've never actually been inside a dance floor because I was too immature. And that was carried out again. There were about 10 students inside dancing, and the rest of the school was outside playing games. So, but it was great fun. I also was able to attend the Student Senate, but the thing that really was probably most impressive, left the biggest impression on me was the sports activity. I will call it the School Olympics. That was at Laguna Middle School. There are kids that were playing on teams that never would have had an opportunity to play on teams. There are parents there watching their kids playing on teams that never would have had an opportunity to see their kids play on teams. We teach a lot of social skills in public schools, but teamwork, there's just no other place that you can get that experience. And it was just wonderful to see these kids really playing well. So I really appreciate this. And I think the reason that I know I do, and I think maybe the reason Chris does this, calls attention to this stuff, is there's just so much going on in our schools. And so, yeah, I got to go, but it's really our staff is just amazing for putting this on every day, every week. So thanks very much.
Mr. Banfield.
Well, I think I really like boardwalks. They are fun. And just a personal note. So we went to the Loams Boardwalk And Mr. Bloom took us to an Advent class. And as he's introducing the three of us, the teacher turned and looked at me and says, "Mr. Banfield." And I looked at her. He says, "It's me, Faye Roundy." She was my first class that I taught, period. I know it was very humbling to see that, and just made it all those years. It was so fun. It was so fun.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, thank you very much, everyone. We will meet again on February 16th for a study session, and our next regular meeting will be February 21st. Thanks for coming. Oh, well. Did I say? Oh, the 21st is a regular board meeting. The 22nd is our, yeah, so I was right. That's what I said, a regular meeting. Yeah.